Folks, I'm really excited about today's episode because my guest is or has a level of insight in the advanced air mobility market that is so high that it will ultimately help many of you better comprehend this nascent sector and ultimately make better investment decisions. Now, I want to be clear that we will not be providing investment advice here and that you need to do your own research. So that being said, Sergio, thank you so much for making the time to sit with me today.
Thank you, Jafar. Pleasure being here.
Let's assume that people who are watching us do not know who you are.
Sure.
Can you share a bit of your background on you, what you do, and also the type of companies and organizations you work with?
Sure. Personal background, PhD in Aero, MBA, former executive of Fortune 200s. Started this consulting company 12 years ago. And we have grown to have 10 people and cover all of aerospace, defense, and auto tech, where we provide strategic and business advice to companies, medium to large size, and some startups as well.
You have a PhD in aerodynamics, correct?
It's propulsion, aero, and flight controls, yes.
Okay, so how did you go to strategy and marketing and ultimately consulting?
Sure. But when I started my career, I think a few years into my career, I was offered the choice to continue to go up in the engineering ranks or switch to the business side, and I went to the dark side.
Where did the idea of SMG consulting come from?
Well, I mean, we knew that, between me and the other partners, we had a very good understanding of the aerospace market. And so we thought that we could help, especially on the growth side of the house. And that was the idea behind starting the company.
And then what type of companies do you work with, organizations? Do they ask you for, so do you contribute to M&As?
So a lot of the work we do for them is on the business planning, on the market research, on the competitive intelligence. We do specific work also on M&A and funding.
Sergio, you're known, and SMG Consulting is known in the industry for the Advanced Air Mobility Reality Index, so ARI for short. The release of each update is becoming somewhat of an event in the industry. Tell me more, where did the idea come from in the first place?
So you're too kind. So the way that it started is it started as an internal need of the company. Once we decided to get into the advanced air mobility market, there was an internal need to parse through all of the entrants in the industry and understanding who we should work with, who we should work for. Shortly after that, we thought that maybe what we were doing could be something that would be interesting to more people than just us in the company. And that is when we let the index loose on the world. And it's with time, it has grown to be something that the industry looks at for an understanding of progress, for an understanding of advancement. And we pride ourselves with trying to provide a read through all of the different information that comes on a daily basis. And also ground this information in the aerospace reality. And all of us have been in aerospace for 20 to 30 years, so we have an idea of that.
Just curious to know if investment bankers and financial analysts use your index as part of their tools.
So we know that the index is used also in the financial industry. As far as who uses it, who doesn't use it, that's not something that we know or we want to know.
Looking at the March, the latest update, which is March 24. I cannot wrap my head around the fact that Volocopter ranks number one because they have an inefficient design. They do not fly on wing. They had back-to-back snags with Singapore and with Paris. And then on the opposite side, Sergio, Electra, they have a stellar team. Their business use case or their use case is pragmatic, which is regional air mobility cargo. They are killing it on the other side. They do not need rulemaking. They do not need new infrastructure. So can you add some color to the rankings and how these two companies are ranked
Sure.
so differently?
Sure. So first of all, we track progress. We don't track promise. Is this company going to be more successful than this other one? The jury's out. No one knows how the market works. Everyone can make the numbers look as best as they want them to be. So what we track is just progress. And in case of Electra, while they're doing a lot of great progress, in the grand scheme of things, they are not at the same level of progress, for example, as a Volocopter. Now, when you look at, for example, Volocopter, so number one, let's be clear that the SC veto regulations are very well defined. So we don't have to try and understand how they work. In Europe, they're clear. And the other part is a few clarifications. So when we talk about snafus in Singapore and in Paris, number one, let's be honest that this is the only company that is actually ready to enter service anywhere. And then the second part is consider that there is two ways to go about doing entry into service in a city. You can either subsidize the entry into service, or you can get the entry into service subsidized. And it really depends on who's the most interested in this entry into service. Is the OEM or operator more interested in the market, or is the market more interested into the operator? And so in Singapore, you might have seen a market that was not as interested in advanced air mobility as we talked about it before. And again, Singapore, it's a very small city, so there is a very good transportation infrastructures and everything. So it's a little bit of the same issue as Europe, where the infrastructure is already so good. And urban air mobility is, while it's always a market, it's not going to be as big of a market as, for example, in places like China or the US. And then the second part, you were talking about the configuration, or the third part. So when it comes to the configuration, there is no argument from me that having a wing is definitely more efficient. However, having a wing creates a much more complex configuration. And so here we get to the point of the discussion that has no solution, that is, which one is more important, enter service as quickly as possible or creating an efficient airplane. And so that is the idea with Volocopter, was let's enter service as quickly as possible. And again, as they have communicated, there is larger airplanes that they are working on that will come into service in the following years. And again, these airplanes won't be trailing far behind the airplanes from the other companies.
Is it fair to say that the index tracks how realistic is the entry into service that they are advertising, as opposed to trying to, between bracket, predict the financial viability or profitability of the company?
Yeah, so the index tracks the certification and entry into service of these aircraft, as well as production at scale. So if you want to be successful, certification is just the first step. The next step is you need to make sure that you can enter service. And the next step after that is you need to make sure that you can make these airplanes. And again, this industry still has not felt what it means to start producing. And I wouldn't be surprised if when production starts, the cash burns increase up to 9 digits a year as opposed to 8. Because the moment that you start carrying inventory, work in progress becomes something that is completely different. So it's a little bit different when it comes to these other pieces. We think that predicting someone's successful financial viability in the future is more of a crystal ball type of prediction, and we shy away from doing that. Because again, we like to be data driven, so that when anyone asks questions, we can fall back and say we did this because of X, Y, and Z. I don't know if anyone knows exactly what is happening inside the companies, and so the financial viability of these companies could be great and could be not great. And again, let's not forget, a company like ARI that was producing a supersonic business jet. They didn't fail when everything was bad. They failed after announcing a Mach 3 airplane and the start of construction of the new headquarters and production facility. So that's something, and it's a company that raised billions. So that's something that we need to always consider.
Do you take heat from time to time because of the ranking? Like somebody calling you and telling you, "Well, I'm last," or I should be first, or something like that.
I mean, I wouldn't say we take heat. I think we always have good discussions with the OEMs, and we invite them to reach out if in case they think that our rankings are not correct. Again, there is a million different pieces moving, and the way that we built our ranking is we built our ranking in a way that we can incorporate non-public data, and we have NDAs with every single OEM, and so that allows us to put stuff that might not be public yet, but we already incorporated in the ranking. And so when it comes to this, I would say there is no frantic phone call complaining about the ranking. It's more a phone call that might say, hey, by the way, we did X, Y, Z. You didn't take into account. And 9 times out of 10, it's because it's either something that the public is not aware, or it is something that is just happened.
One of the most exciting things to me in the advanced air mobility market is what companies like X-Wing and Reliable Robotics are doing. Why this focus only on electric aircraft, Sergio?
So the ranking covers advanced air mobility, so not just electric airplanes. If you look at the definition of advanced air mobility, is the intersection of 3 technologies: distributed propulsion, electrification, and autonomy. So on the autonomy side, we could say that the companies you mentioned do fit in the index. However, we only track companies that are doing new designs and not retrofits. And that is the reason why we do not look at these companies yet. Do we follow them? This is the other part that I think might not be familiar, but the index is a little bit like an iceberg. What you see is just a minority of what we track. There is many more companies, probably even double the companies that you see in the index that we still track. And that is how companies once in a while float to the top of the iceberg. It's not because, oh, the guys, they just figured out their company existed. No, we knew that company existed and we've been tracking it for years. It's just we thought that it was the right moment to introduce a new company. So and you will see the April release of the index comes out next week. And in fact, we will have 2 new OEMs in the index.